The winter mating ball had transformed the palace into something out of a dream. Crystal chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings, each one holding 1,000 candles that cast dancing shadows across marble floors. The air smelled of winter roses and expensive wine, of perfumes that cost more money than most people saw in a year. Silk gowns in every color imaginable swirled across the ballroom as wolves from every pack in the kingdom gathered for the most important night of the social season. Elara Bonner watched it all from the servants' corridor, her stomach twisting with hunger so fierce it made her hands shake. She pressed her palm against the cool stone wall, steadying herself. The dizziness had been getting worse all day, but there was no time to rest. Madame Turlo had made that very clear. "You will serve tonight without complaint," her guardian had said that morning, her voice cold and precise. "You will be invisible. You will not embarrass me in front of the nobility, and if you so much as think about taking food from the kitchens, I will know." Elara had learned long ago not to argue. Madame Turlo had taken her in after her parents died in a hunting accident when she was 7 years old. Or at least, that's what everyone said it was. An accident. A tragedy. Nothing suspicious about 2 strong wolves dying on a routine patrol. Elara had been too young to ask the right questions then. Now, at 19, she'd learned that questions only brought punishment. She'd also learned to endure. The other servants hurried past her, carrying trays of delicacies to the noble guests. Lydia McGraw, a kitchen maid with kind eyes, paused beside her. "You look pale," Lydia whispered. "When did you last eat?" "Yesterday morning," Elara admitted quietly. Lydia's face tightened with anger, but she quickly smoothed it away. Showing emotion around Madame Turlo's household was dangerous. "I saved you some bread from breakfast. It's wrapped in cloth behind the flour sacks. Promise me you'll get it after your shift." "I promise," Elara managed a small smile. "Thank you." Lydia squeezed her hand once, then disappeared into the crowd. Elara took a deep breath and picked up her assigned tray. It held crystal glasses filled with champagne, each one worth more than everything she owned. She'd been instructed to circulate through the ballroom, offering drinks to guests, then return to the kitchens for more. Simple, mechanical, invisible. She stepped through the servants' entrance and into the glittering world beyond. The ballroom was enormous, built to hold hundreds of wolves from every corner of the kingdom. Tonight it was packed with the most powerful among them. Pack alphas stood in tight clusters, discussing politics and alliances. Their daughters and sons preened in expensive clothing, hopping to catch the eye of a worthy mate. The unmated wolves prowled the edges of the dance floor, their eyes bright with possibility. And above them all, on a raised dais at the far end of the ballroom, sat the Alpha King. Elara had never seen him this close before. Derek Nightborne was everything the stories said he was. Tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair and eyes that seemed to see straight through pretense. He wore black, as always, the color of his pack. The Nightborne wolves were the oldest and strongest bloodline in the kingdom, and Derek had held the throne for 8 years with an iron will and absolute authority. He looked bored. No, not bored. Restrained. Like a predator forced to sit still at a feast it had no interest in attending. Elara tore her gaze away before anyone noticed her staring. Servants didn't look at the king. Servants didn't exist unless called upon. She moved through the crowd carefully, offering champagne to guests who barely glanced at her. She'd perfected the art of being invisible over the years. Keep your eyes down. Move smoothly. Don't speak unless spoken to. Disappear into the background like you were never there at all. The hunger made it harder than usual. Her vision blurred at the edges as she crossed the marble floor. The heat from the candles and the press of bodies made the air thick and suffocating. She could hear her own heartbeat too loud in her ears, feel the weakness spreading through her limbs. Just make it to the kitchens, she told herself. Just a few more minutes. She was halfway across the ballroom when the world tilted. Elara tried to catch herself, but her legs wouldn't obey. The tray slipped from her fingers. She heard crystal shattering against marble, heard the sudden shocked gasps of the crowd, felt herself falling toward the hard floor below. And then strong arms caught her. The impact never came. Instead, she found herself cradled against a chest that radiated warmth and power, held by someone who moved faster than thought itself. Time seemed to stop. The ballroom went completely silent. Even the music faltered and died. Elara's vision cleared slowly, and she found herself staring up into eyes as dark as midnight. Derek Nightborne looked down at her with an expression she couldn't read. Shock, maybe, confusion, and something else. Something that made her breath catch in her throat. "Your Majesty," Madame Turlot's voice cut through the silence like a blade. "I apologize profusely for this disruption. The girl is clumsy and careless. I will remove her immediately and ensure she is punished for this embarrassment." The king didn't look at Madame Turlot. His eyes stayed locked on Elara's face. "What is your name?" His voice was deep and controlled, but there was an edge to it that made the air feel electric. Elara's throat was too dry to answer. "I asked you a question." His tone didn't rise, but the command in it was absolute. "Elara," she whispered. "Elara Bonner." Something flickered across his face. Recognition, maybe, though that made no sense. The Alpha King wouldn't know the name of a servant girl. "When did you last eat, Elara Bonner?" The question was so unexpected that she answered honestly. "Yesterday morning, Your Majesty." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Derek's jaw tightened. When he spoke again, his voice carried across the entire ballroom. "No one touches her." Madame Turlot stepped forward, her face pale but determined. "Your Majesty, she is my ward. I am responsible for her discipline and care. I assure you this will not happen again." "You are correct." Derek stood, and Elara realized he was still holding her, still cradling her against his chest like she weighed nothing at all. "It will not happen again because she is no longer your ward." The gasps that rippled through the crowd were audible this time. "Your Majesty," Madame Turlot's voice shook with barely controlled rage, "you cannot simply claim another person's property." "She is not property." The words came out like a growl. "And I can do whatever I want. I am the king." He turned and walked toward the exit, carrying Elara with him. His personal guards fell into formation around them immediately. The crowd parted like water before a ship's bow. Elara's mind was spinning. This couldn't be happening. Kings didn't rescue servant girls. Kings didn't even notice servant girls. And they certainly didn't carry them out of ballrooms in front of the entire nobility. "Your Majesty," she managed to whisper, "I don't understand." Derek looked down at her, and for just a moment his controlled mask slipped. She saw confusion there, frustration, and something that looked almost like fear. "Neither do I," he said quietly. "Neither do I." The ballroom doors closed behind them, cutting off the stunned silence and shocked whispers. Elara's last thought before the exhaustion pulled her under was that her life had just changed forever. She just didn't know if that change would save her or destroy her. Derek Nightborne had ruled the kingdom for 8 years, and in all that time, he had never felt fear quite like this. Not fear of battle, not fear of political enemies. Fear of the instinct currently screaming through every nerve in his body, demanding he protect the fragile woman in his arms at any cost. The mate bond. It wasn't supposed to feel like this. The stories described it as a gentle warmth, a pleasant recognition, a natural pull between compatible souls. They didn't mention the fierce, all-consuming need that had hit him the moment Elara Bonner walked into that ballroom. He'd been sitting on his throne, half listening to Counselor Voss drone on about trade agreements when the sensation struck. Like lightning down his spine. Like every instinct he'd spent years controlling suddenly roaring to life at once. His wolf had surged forward, desperate and demanding. Mate, protect, claim. Derek had frozen, his fingers gripping the arms of his throne hard enough to leave marks in the wood. He'd scanned the ballroom with barely controlled panic, searching for the source of the disturbance. And then he'd seen her. Small, thin, moving through the crowd like a ghost, so practiced at being invisible that most people didn't even register her presence. But Derek saw her. His wolf saw her. And every protective instinct he possessed locked onto her like she was the only person in the room. When she collapsed, he moved without thinking. One moment he was on the dais, the next he was across the ballroom, catching her before she hit the ground. The moment he touched her, the bond snapped into place completely. Now carrying her through the palace corridors toward his private tower, Derek was trying very hard not to let that bond override his rational mind. He was a king. He was in control. He did not act on instinct alone. But God's, the instinct was strong. "Should I summon the palace physician, your majesty?" Clyde Cross, his head guard, asked from behind him. "Yes, and send someone to the kitchens. I want food prepared immediately. Broth, bread, nothing too heavy." Derek's voice came out rougher than he intended. "She's been starved." He felt Clyde's shock even without looking at him. The Turlow household was known to be strict, but this crossed a line. This was cruelty disguised as discipline. They reached his tower, and Derek carried Elara inside. The space was his sanctuary, the one place in the palace where he could escape the constant demands of kingship. Now he was bringing someone into it, bringing her into it. He laid her carefully on the couch near the fireplace, then stepped back before his wolf could do something foolish like refuse to let her go. She looked so small against the dark leather. Her clothes were worn and ill-fitting, clearly hand-me-downs from other servants. Her dark hair had come loose from its braid, falling around a face that would be beautiful if it wasn't so gaunt. She had delicate features, high cheekbones, and skin that would probably glow with health if she were properly fed. Derek felt rage building in his chest. How long had she been living like this? How long had Madame Turlow been slowly killing her through neglect? The physician arrived quickly, a middle-aged woman named Mabel Haskins who'd served the palace for 20 years. She took one look at Elara, and her expression hardened. "Malnutrition," she said bluntly, checking Elara's pulse and breathing. "Dehydration, probably been going on for months, maybe years. She needs rest, food, and time to recover. The collapse was her body's way of shutting down before permanent damage occurred." Derek's hands clenched into fists. "Will she be all right?" "If she's cared for properly from now on, yes." Mabel gave him a sharp look. "I assume that's your intention, your majesty." "It is." Mabel nodded and continued her examination. Derek watched in silence, his wolf packing anxiously beneath his skin. The food arrived shortly after. Derek dismissed the servants immediately, wanting privacy. He wasn't ready for the palace gossip to truly explode yet, though he knew it was inevitable. The Alpha King had claimed a servant girl in front of the entire mating ball. The rumors would be vicious and immediate. Elara stirred about 20 minutes later. Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused at first, then sharpening with sudden awareness. She tried to sit up too quickly and swayed. "Slowly," Derek said from his chair across the room. He deliberately kept his distance, not trusting himself to stay controlled if he got too close. "You fainted. You're in my tower. You're safe." Elara's eyes went wide. She looked around the room, taking in the expensive furniture, the books lining the walls, the fire crackling in the hearth. Then her gaze landed on him, and he saw fear flash across her face. "I didn't mean to cause a scene," she said quickly. "I'm sorry, your majesty. I'll go back to Madame Turlow and accept whatever punishment." "No," the word came out harder than he intended. "You're not going back to that house, ever." Silence. Elara stared at him like he'd spoken a foreign language. "I don't understand." "You said you hadn't eaten since yesterday morning. The physician says you're suffering from malnutrition and dehydration. That's not discipline. That's abuse." Derek forced himself to stay seated, to keep his voice level. "Madame Turlow is no longer your guardian. You're under my protection now." "But you can't just..." Elara stopped, seeming to realize she was arguing with the king. "I mean, why would you do that? I'm nobody, I'm just a servant." Derek met her eyes. "You're not nobody." The air between them felt charged. Derek could see her trying to puzzle it out, trying to understand why the Alpha King would suddenly care about the fate of one starving servant girl. He wasn't ready to tell her about the bond. Not yet. She was already scared and overwhelmed. Adding the weight of a mate bond she hadn't chosen would only make things worse. I don't force bonds, he said carefully, and I don't claim people against their will, but I can offer you protection. A place to recover, safety from anyone who's hurt you. And then what? Elara's voice was barely above a whisper. What happens when I'm recovered? Then you choose. Stay in the palace if you want. Leave if you prefer. I'll provide resources either way. Derek leaned forward slightly. But right now you need to eat something and rest. Everything else can wait. He gestured to the tray of food on the table beside the couch. Elara looked at it like it might be a trap. It's not poisoned, Derek said dryly, and I'm not going to punish you for eating. That's what food is for. Slowly, hesitantly, Elara reached for the bread. She tore off a small piece and ate it carefully, like she was still waiting for someone to slap it out of her hand. Derek's wolf growled at the evidence of her fear. Someone had trained her to expect cruelty. Someone had taught her that survival meant making herself invisible. He would find out who, and he would make sure they never had the chance to hurt anyone again. There's a bedroom through that door, he said quietly. It's yours for as long as you need it. No one will bother you there. No one will hurt you. You have my word. Elara looked at him for a long moment. He could see her trying to decide if he was telling the truth, if this was real or some elaborate trap. Finally, she nodded. Thank you, Your Majesty. Derek, he said impulsively. When we're alone, you can call me Derek. Her eyes widened. That wouldn't be appropriate. Neither is half of what happened tonight. Derek managed a small smile. I think we're past worrying about appropriate. A tiny smile ghosted across her face before disappearing. But it was enough. Enough to give him hope that underneath the fear and trauma, there was a person who might still remember how to smile freely. Eat, he said gently. Rest. Tomorrow we'll figure out the next steps. Elara nodded and turned her attention back to the food. Derek stood and moved toward the door, giving her space. Derek, her voice stopped him. He turned back. Why did you catch me? She asked. In the ballroom, you moved so fast, like you knew I was going to fall before it happened. Derek looked at her, this small, brave woman who'd survived years of cruelty and was still somehow holding onto her dignity. His mate, his partner, his equal, even if she didn't know it yet. I felt it, he said honestly. The moment you walked into that room, I felt something change, and when you fell, there was no choice. I had to catch you. But why? Derek smiled, sad and knowing. That's what I'm trying to figure out too. He left her alone with her food and her questions, closing the door quietly behind him. Clyde was waiting in the corridor outside. The council wants an emergency meeting, his guard said. They're demanding an explanation for what happened at the ball. They can wait until morning. Derek started walking toward his study. Right now, I have research to do. Research on what, Your Majesty? Derek glanced back at him. The Bonner family. I want to know everything about Elara's parents, how they died, why she ended up with the Turlows, everything. Clyde's expression shifted to understanding. You think there's more to the story? I know there is. Derek's jaw tightened. And I'm going to find out what was worth hiding. Elara woke to sunlight streaming through windows she didn't recognize. For a moment, pure panic seized her. She wasn't in the servants' quarters. She wasn't in her narrow cot with its thin blanket and the sound of other girls breathing in the darkness around her. She was in a bed so soft it felt like floating, under blankets that smelled like cedar and winter nights, in a room with actual furniture and rugs and paintings on the walls. The memories of last night crashed over her like a wave. The ballroom, the collapse, the Alpha King catching her in his arms and refusing to let go. Elara sat up slowly, her body still weak but better than it had been. Someone had brought her night clothes while she slept. Real night clothes made of soft cotton, not the rough cast-offs she usually wore. Her dirty servant's uniform was gone. She stood on shaky legs and explored the room. It was smaller than the main chamber where Derek had left her with food last night, but still luxurious by any standards she knew. There was a bathroom with running water and towels so thick and white they looked like clouds, a wardrobe that held several simple dresses in her size, a writing desk with paper and ink. It felt like a dream. A beautiful, impossible dream that she'd wake from at any moment. A knock on the door made her jump. "Miss Bonner," a woman's voice, kind but professional. "I'm Miranda Doolin, one of the palace attendants. His Majesty asked me to check on you this morning. May I come in?" Elara crossed to the door and opened it carefully. Miranda was middle-aged, with gentle eyes and graying hair pulled back in a neat bun. She carried a tray of food that made Elara's stomach clench with hunger. "Good morning," Miranda said warmly. "I brought breakfast. How are you feeling?" "I'm not sure," Elara admitted. "Confused, this doesn't make sense." Miranda set the tray on the small table near the window. "I imagine not. It's been quite the whirlwind, hasn't it? The whole palace is talking about it." Elara's heart sank. "They're angry." "Some are," Miranda said honestly. "The old council members don't like disruption, but others are intrigued. And a few of us who work in the palace every day are just glad someone finally stood up to that horrible Turlo woman." Elara looked at her in surprise. "You know her?" "Everyone who works in noble households knows her type." Miranda's expression hardened. "We see what goes on behind closed doors. We know which families treat their staff with respect and which ones treat them like dirt. The Turlos have a reputation." "I survived," Elara said quietly. "You did more than survive, dear. You endured. There's a difference." Miranda gestured to the food. "Now eat. The king left strict instructions that you're to have 3 full meals a day, no exceptions." Elara sat and picked up the spoon. The soup was rich and warm, filled with vegetables and herbs that tasted like heaven. She forced herself to eat slowly, even though her body was screaming for her to consume everything immediately. "What happens now?" she asked between bites. "I can't stay here forever. This is the king's private tower." "His Majesty is meeting with the council this morning," Miranda said. "I expect he'll want to speak with you afterward. In the meantime, you're to rest and recover. Those are orders." Elara finished her breakfast in silence, her mind spinning. The Alpha King had protected her last night, but protection didn't mean freedom. It meant she'd traded one cage for another, even if this cage had softer bars. She needed to understand what he wanted from her, why he'd intervened, what price she'd eventually be expected to pay. Derek found her in the tower's library an hour later. Elara had discovered the room while exploring, drawn to the floor-to-ceiling shelves packed with books. She'd never had much time for reading in Madame Turlo's house, but she'd loved it as a child. Her mother used to read to her before bed, stories about brave wolves and ancient magic and love that conquered everything. She was running her fingers along the spines when she heard footsteps behind her. "Do you like to read?" Derek's voice was quieter than she expected, less commanding than it had been in public. Elara turned to face him. He looked tired, like he hadn't slept much. Still powerful, still radiating that aura of controlled authority, but there were shadows under his eyes. "I used to," she said. "I haven't had much time for it lately." "You'll have time now." Derek moved into the room, keeping a respectful distance between them. "You can read anything here. Take whatever you want to your room." "That's generous," Elara hesitated. "The council meeting didn't go well, did it?" Derek's mouth quirked in a humorless smile. "How did you know?" "You look like a man who's been arguing with fools all morning." He laughed, surprised. "That's exactly what it felt like. Half the council thinks I've lost my mind. The other half thinks I'm planning some elaborate political maneuver they haven't figured out yet." "And which is it?" "Neither." Derek ran a hand through his hair. "I did what felt right in the moment, that's all." Elara studied him. He was being honest, she realized. The Alpha King, the most powerful wolf in the kingdom, had acted on instinct, on feeling, on something he couldn't fully explain. It made him seem more human, more real. "They're saying you claimed me," Elara said quietly. "That you announced it in front of everyone at the ball." "I said you were under my protection. That's not the same as claiming." "To the nobles, it is." Elara wrapped her arms around herself. "They'll think I'm your mistress now, or worse, that I used some kind of trick to seduce you." Derek's expression darkened. "Let them think whatever they want. Their opinions don't matter. They matter to me. Elara's voice rose slightly. I have to live with those opinions. I have to exist in a world where people will judge me based on what happened last night. You're the king. You can ignore gossip. I can't. Derek was silent for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was carefully controlled. You're right. I didn't think about that. I should have. His admission surprised her. Kings didn't usually admit mistakes, especially not to servant girls. I can offer you options, Derek continued. You can stay here in the tower, completely private. No one has access except by my permission. Or I can arrange quarters elsewhere in the palace. Or if you prefer, I can set you up in a house in the city. Give you resources to start a new life away from all of this. Why? Elara asked. Why are you doing this? Derek looked at her, and she saw conflict in his eyes. A war between what he wanted to say and what he thought he should say. Because you deserve better than what you've had, he said finally. Because I have the power to help you and I choose to use it. And because... He stopped abruptly. Because what? Elara pressed. Because the moment I saw you, something in me recognized something in you. Derek's voice dropped lower. I don't understand it yet, but I'm not going to ignore it. The air between them felt charged with possibility. Elara's heart was racing, though she couldn't tell if it was from fear or something else entirely. The mate bond, she whispered. That's what you're talking about, isn't it? Derek's eyes widened slightly. You know about that. I'm not stupid, and I'm not deaf. Elara lifted her chin. I've heard the whispers in the palace all morning, the speculation. Everyone's trying to figure out why the Alpha King would risk political chaos for a nobody servant girl. The mate bond is the only explanation that makes sense. It's not the only explanation, Derek said quietly. But yes, it's what I suspect. Suspect, Elara frowned. Don't you know? It's not always clear immediately. The bond can be subtle at first, especially if both parties aren't ready for it. Derek moved closer, his gaze intent. But what I felt last night was not subtle. When you walked into that ballroom, it was like every instinct I had locked onto you at once. When you collapsed, I moved without thinking. And when I caught you... He stopped, jaw tightening. When you caught me, what? Elara's voice was barely audible. When I caught you, my wolf recognized you as mine. Not as property, not as something to claim or control, but as an equal, a partner, a mate. Elara's breath caught. This was real. This was actually happening. The Alpha King was standing in front of her, admitting that the mate bond had awakened between them. I didn't choose this, she said. I know. I don't know you. I don't know if I can trust you. I know. You could force this. You're the king. You could make me accept the bond whether I want to or not. Derek's expression hardened. I could, but I won't. The mate bond should be a choice, Elara, not a chain. She searched his face for any sign of deception, and found none. He meant it. He was actually giving her the choice. I need time, she said finally. I need time to figure out who I am outside of being Madame Turlot's servant. I need time to heal, to think, to decide what I want my life to look like. Then you'll have it. Derek stepped back, giving her space. Stay in the tower, rest, recover, get to know me if you want or ignore me if you prefer. But you're under my protection regardless. No one will hurt you, no one will force you, that's my promise. Elara felt tears prick at her eyes. It was the first time in her life that someone with power had promised to protect her without demanding something in return. Thank you, she whispered. Derek smiled, soft and genuine. You don't have to thank me for basic decency. In my experience, decency is rare. Then your experience is about to change. He turned to leave, then paused at the door. Elara, when you're ready to decide about the bond, whether you want to accept it or reject it, I'll respect your choice. But until then, I'll be here, waiting. What if I reject it? She asked. What if I decide I don't want this? Derek's expression was unreadable. Then I'll help you build whatever life you choose instead, even if it breaks me to do it. He left before she could respond. Elara stood alone in the library, surrounded by books and possibilities, and wondered if she'd just found something precious or walked into a trap more sophisticated than any she'd known before. Only time would tell. 3 days passed in the tower, and Elara learned what it felt like to simply exist without fear. She woke when her body wanted to wake, not when bells rang or angry voices shouted. She ate 3 meals a day, real food that tasted like someone had put care into making it. She bathed in warm water with soap that smelled like lavender. She wore clothes that fit and didn't have holes. It was strange and wonderful and terrifying all at once. Miranda visited every morning, bringing food and quiet conversation. She never pushed Elara to talk about her past or her future. She just offered companionship without expectation, which was its own kind of gift. Derek kept his distance, but his presence was felt everywhere. Books appeared on her nightstand, chosen based on stories she'd mentioned liking as a child. A warm cloak showed up in her wardrobe before she'd even mentioned feeling cold. When she'd casually remarked to Miranda that she missed the sound of rain, Derek had the tower windows open during a storm so she could listen. He was learning her, watching her, caring for her from a careful distance. It should have felt invasive. Instead, it felt like being seen for the first time in her life. On the 4th day, Elara decided she was tired of hiding. She found Derek in his study, bent over a desk covered in papers. He looked up when she entered, surprise crossing his face. "Elara, is everything all right?" "I want to talk," she said. "Actually talk, not just polite distance and careful words." Derek set down his pen immediately. "All right, what do you want to talk about?" Elara closed the door and moved to the chair across from his desk. "Tell me about the mate bond. The real truth, not the romantic stories. What does it actually mean?" Derek leaned back in his chair, considering his words carefully. "The mate bond is a connection between 2 wolves that goes beyond normal attraction or affection. It's recognition on a primal level. Your wolf sees something in another wolf that completes something in yourself." "That sounds like the romantic story," Elara said dryly. Derek smiled. "Fair point. The less romantic truth is that it makes you vulnerable. When you accept a mate bond, you're linking your life to another person's. You feel their emotions. You're aware of their presence. If they're hurt, you hurt. If they die, part of you dies too." "That sounds terrifying." "It can be. It's also rare. Most wolves never find their true mate. They choose partners based on compatibility or political advantage or simple affection. There's nothing wrong with that, but a true mate bond is different. And you think we have one." "I know we do." Derek's gaze was steady. "I felt it the moment you entered that ballroom, but feeling it and accepting it are 2 different things." Elara tucked her feet under her in the chair. "What if one person wants the bond and the other doesn't? What happens then?" "The bond can be rejected. It's painful for both parties, but it's possible. The connection fades over time, though you never forget the person completely." "Have you ever rejected a bond before?" "No, I've never felt one before." Derek's voice was quiet. "I'd started to think I never would. Most alphas find their mates young. I'm 28 and I'd given up hope." Elara processed this. "So when you felt the bond with me, it was a surprise." "A shock," Derek corrected. "One moment I was bored and restless at a political event. The next, my entire world had narrowed to one person I'd never met. And you still chose to intervene, even though I was a servant, even though it would cause political problems." "I couldn't not intervene." Derek's expression was intense. "When you collapsed, every instinct I had demanded I protect you. Political consequences didn't matter. Social status didn't matter. You mattered." Elara felt her chest tighten. "I'm not used to mattering." "I know, but you do. Even without the bond, you would matter. You're a person who deserves safety and dignity and choice." They sat in silence for a moment. Elara could feel something building between them, a tension that was equal parts terrifying and exhilarating. "Can I ask you something personal?" she said finally. "Anything." "Do you resent me for being your mate? I'm not noble, I'm not educated, I can't help you politically. I'm probably the worst possible match for a king." Derek stood and moved around the desk, sitting on the edge so he was closer to her level. You want to know what I see when I look at you? Elara nodded, not trusting her voice. I see strength, Derek said quietly. You survived years of cruelty and didn't let it break you. You endured starvation and neglect, and you still had the dignity to keep going. You're kind to the servants who help you. You say thank you for every small gesture. You haven't once tried to use your connection to me for personal gain or revenge against people who hurt you. That's just being a decent person. In my world, decent people are rare, especially among the powerful. Derek's gaze was warm. You're not the worst possible match for a king. You might be exactly what I need. Elara's heart was racing. She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that this wasn't some elaborate game or trap. I'm scared, she admitted. I'm scared of trusting you and being wrong. I'm scared of accepting the bond and losing myself. I'm scared that one day you'll wake up and realize I'm not worth the trouble. Derek reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, he took her hand in his. The contact sent warmth flooding through her entire body. I'm scared too, he said. I'm scared of pushing too hard and driving you away. I'm scared of not being able to protect you from the political fallout of this. I'm scared that my world will hurt you in ways I can't prevent. So what do? Elara whispered. We take it slow. We get to know each other as people, not just as king and potential mate. We build trust one day at a time, and we don't make any permanent decisions until you're absolutely certain. Elara looked down at their joined hands. His was so much larger than hers, scarred from training and battle, rough with calluses, but his grip was gentle. Tell me about yourself, she said impulsively. Not the king part, the person part. Derek smiled. What do you want to know? Everything, what you were like as a child, what you like to do when you're not ruling, what makes you laugh. So Derek told her about growing up as the alpha heir, knowing from childhood that he'd one day rule. About losing his parents to illness when he was 20, forced to take the throne before he felt ready. About the loneliness of leadership, the way everyone saw the crown instead of the man wearing it. He told her about his love of early mornings, when the palace was quiet and he could walk the grounds alone. About his collection of maps from ancient times, marking territories that no longer existed. About his terrible singing voice that he only indulged when completely alone. Elara found herself laughing at his stories, relaxing in a way she hadn't since childhood. Your turn, Derek said. Tell me about Elara before the Turlos. So she did. About parents who loved her fiercely, who taught her to read and think and question. About summer evenings playing in the forest, learning to track and hunt. About her mother's stories and her father's quiet strength. And then about the day they died. The confusion and grief. The way Madame Turlo had appeared like a savior, offering to take in the orphaned daughter of her distant cousins. I didn't know it was a trap, Elara said quietly. Not at first. She seemed kind, generous. But once the legal papers were signed and I was officially her ward, everything changed. What happened? Derek's voice was carefully controlled. Nothing dramatic, no beatings or torture, just slow, systematic erasure. I went from being a person to being property. My clothes became cast-offs from her daughters. My meals became whatever scraps were left. My room became whatever corner was available. I learned to be invisible because visibility meant punishment. Derek's jaw was tight. How long? 12 years, from age 7 to now. 12 years. Derek's hand tightened on hers. 12 years of that woman slowly starving you, working you, erasing everything that made you a person. I survived it. You shouldn't have had to. Elara met his eyes and saw fury there. Not at her, but for her. It was a strange feeling, having someone angry on her behalf. I'm starting to realize that, she said softly. That I deserved better. That what happened to me wasn't normal or acceptable. That I'm allowed to want more. You're allowed to want everything, Derek said fiercely. You're allowed to demand the world and set it on fire if it doesn't give you what you need. Elara laughed despite herself. That seems dramatic. I'm a dramatic person when it comes to protecting people I care about. You care about me. More every day. The air between them shifted. Elara could feel the pull of the bond, the way her wolf recognized his and wanted to close the distance. But there was also her own growing attraction, separate from destiny or magic. She liked talking to him, liked his humor and honesty, liked the way he looked at her like she was valuable. I need more time, she said, but I'm not scared of you anymore. Derek smiled. That's progress, I'll take it. A knock at the door interrupted them. Clyde entered, his expression grim. Your Majesty, we have a problem. Derek stood immediately, though he didn't release Elara's hand. What is it? There have been attacks on the eastern border. 3 patrol groups, all hit in the last 2 days. No survivors. Derek's expression went cold and controlled. What kind of attacks? Unknown creatures. Fast, organized, unlike anything we've seen before. But that's not the strangest part. Go on. Clyde's gaze flicked to Elara, then back to Derek. The survivors from the villages near the attacks said the creatures were hunting, looking for something specific, and when we investigated the attack sites, we found this. He held out a torn piece of fabric. Even from across the room, Elara could see the crest embroidered on it. Her family's crest. The room went silent. They're looking for me, Elara whispered. Aren't they? Derek's hand tightened protectively around hers. It appears so. But why? I'm nobody. I have nothing worth hunting. Clyde and Derek exchanged a look. Your Majesty, Clyde said carefully, I think it's time we showed her what we found in the archives. Derek nodded slowly. He turned to Elara, his expression serious. There are things about your parents' deaths that don't add up. Things about your family history that were deliberately hidden. I've been researching for days, and I think I'm starting to understand why someone wanted you forgotten. Elara felt cold dread settling in her stomach. What did you find? Your parents weren't just ordinary wolves, Derek said quietly. Your mother was a direct descendant of the moon-blessed bloodline, and your father was protecting a secret that got them both killed. I don't understand. You're not just a survivor, Elara. You're something ancient and powerful that someone went to great lengths to hide. And now that you've been seen, now that you're protected, they're coming to finish what they started 12 years ago. Thunder rumbled outside the tower windows. Elara felt her entire world shifting again, foundations crumbling beneath her feet. What am I? She whispered. Derek squeezed her hand. That's what we're going to figure out, together. The storm broke outside, rain lashing against the glass. And somewhere in the darkness, something ancient turned its attention toward the palace and the girl who'd finally stopped being invisible. The archive room, deep beneath the palace, smelled like old paper and secrets. Elara followed Derek and Clyde down narrow stone stairs, her heart pounding. Above them, the palace was buzzing with activity. Guards were doubling patrols. Messengers were being sent to allied packs. The council was in emergency session. But Derek had insisted on bringing Elara here first, to show her the truth about what she was. The room they entered was circular, with shelves carved directly into the stone walls. Documents stretched back centuries, preserved by careful temperature control and protective enchantments. In the center of the room, Derek had set up a work table covered in papers, books, and maps. 3 days ago, I started researching your family, Derek said, gesturing for Elara to sit. What I found didn't make sense. Your parents were described as ordinary pack members. No rank, no special status. But the amount of effort that went into erasing them from official records suggested otherwise. He pulled out a thick leather journal. This is the Royal Chronicle from 20 years ago. It mentions a gathering of the moon-blessed families. Your mother's name is listed among the attendees. Elara stared at the faded ink. Her mother's name, written in careful script. Real, undeniable. The moon-blessed are an old bloodline, Clyde explained. They were said to have a unique connection to lunar magic, enhanced healing, prophetic dreams, the ability to call on moon strength during battle. Most people think they died out centuries ago. But they didn't, Derek said quietly. They went into hiding because being moon-blessed made you a target. Target for what? Elara asked. Derek pulled out another document, this one with an official seal. 200 years ago, there was a prophecy. It said that when darkness threatened the kingdom, a moon-blessed child would rise with the power to either save everything or destroy it completely. The choice would be theirs to make. Elara felt ice running through her veins. You think I'm this child? I think someone believed you might be, Derek said. Look at the timing. Your parents died 12 years ago, right when you would have been old enough to start showing signs of power. Madame Turlo took you in immediately, isolated you, kept you weak and hungry and invisible. She was hiding me, Elara whispered. Or keeping you suppressed. Moon-blessed powers manifest through connection to the self. Confidence, strength, joy. Everything she did was designed to break you down, to keep you from ever becoming who you were meant to be. Elara stood abruptly, packing across the small room. This couldn't be real. She was just a servant, just a girl who'd survived through stubbornness and luck. I don't have any powers, she said. I can't heal, I don't have prophetic dreams, I'm not special. You survived 12 years of systematic abuse without breaking, Derek said firmly. You kept your kindness and dignity intact. You maintained hope in a situation designed to destroy it. That takes a kind of strength most people never develop. That's not magic, that's just survival. Sometimes they're the same thing. Clyde cleared his throat. Your Majesty, we should show her the rest. Derek hesitated, then nodded. He pulled out a final document, this one newer, a report from just 2 weeks ago. Border scouts reported unusual activity around the old Bonner family lands, Derek said. The territory has been abandoned since your parents died. But recently, something has been searching the area, digging, looking for something. Looking for what? We don't know, but the attack started the same day you appeared at the mating ball. Derek's expression was grim. Whatever was hiding in those ruins has been awakened, and it's hunting. Elara felt panic rising in her chest. Then I need to leave. I need to go somewhere far away where I can't endanger anyone. No, Derek's voice was absolute. Running won't help, they'll follow you, and you'll be vulnerable alone. Then what do I do? You learn, Derek said simply. You discover what you're capable of. You take back the power that was stolen from you, and you make the choice the prophecy talks about on your own terms. I don't know how to do any of that. Then we'll figure it out together. Derek moved closer, his presence solid and reassuring. You're not alone in this, Elara. You have me. You have the resources of the entire kingdom. You have time to learn and grow. What if I can't? Elara's voice broke. What if I'm not strong enough? Derek took her hands in his. Then we'll find another way, but I've seen your strength. I've watched you survive the impossible. I believe in you, even if you don't believe in yourself yet. Elara looked up at him, this powerful man who'd upended his entire life to protect her. Who'd stood against his counsel, risked political chaos, and promised her choices she'd never had before. Why, she whispered, why are you doing all of this? Because you're my mate, Derek said softly. Because I care about you, and because saving you means saving the kingdom. But even if it didn't, even if you were exactly what you thought you were, just a servant girl with no special destiny, I'd still fight for you. That's foolish. Probably, but I've never been particularly wise when it comes to protecting people I care about. Despite everything, Elara almost smiled. Then a thought occurred to her. The creatures that are hunting, she said. What happens if they reach the palace? They won't, Clyde said firmly. We've tripled the guard, set up warning systems, brought in reinforcements from allied packs. But if they do? Derek's expression went hard. Then they'll learn what happens when something threatens what's mine. The possessiveness in his voice should have bothered her. Instead, it made her feel safe, protected. Like for the first time in 12 years, someone was willing to stand between her and danger. I need to see the old family lands, Elara said suddenly. If something is hiding there, if there are answers about my parents and what they were protecting, I need to know. Absolutely not, Derek said immediately. It's too dangerous. Everything is dangerous now. At least there I might find something useful. Elara. I've spent 12 years being protected through isolation and weakness. Look where that got me. Elara's voice was steady now, determined. If I'm supposed to have some kind of power, if I'm supposed to make choices that affect the kingdom, I need to know the truth. All of it. Derek and Clyde exchanged glances. She has a point, Clyde said reluctantly. We're operating blind. If there's something at the old Bonner lands that could help us understand what we're facing, we need it. Fine, Derek said, but we do this my way. Heavy guard, defensive positions, and at the first sign of danger we retreat. Agreed. Agreed, Elara said. They spent the next hour planning the expedition. Elara tried to focus on the logistics, but her mind kept wandering to the bigger picture. She was moon-blessed, descended from an ancient bloodline, possibly the subject of a prophecy that predicted she'd either save or destroy everything. It was absurd. It was terrifying. It was too big for someone who'd spent most of her life just trying to survive one more day. But it was also real. As they left the archives, Derek walked beside her. Are you all right? I don't know, Elara admitted. Everything I thought I knew about myself just got turned upside down. Your identity hasn't changed. You're still you. This just adds context. Context that includes ancient prophecies and magical bloodlines and creatures hunting me in the darkness. Fair point, Derek's mouth quirked. For what it's worth, I liked you before I knew about any of this. The prophecy doesn't make you more valuable to me. Elara looked at him. What does make me valuable to you? Your strength, your kindness, the way you make me laugh, the way you challenge me. Derek's voice softened. The way you see me as a person instead of just a crown. Something warm bloomed in Elara's chest. I do see you, more every day. Good, because I see you too, and what I see is worth fighting for, prophecy or not. They reached the tower stairs. Elara paused before climbing. Derek, about the mate bond. He went still. Yes. I'm not ready to accept it fully, not yet, but I'm not rejecting it either. Elara met his eyes. I want to choose you because I care about you, not because destiny decided for me. Does that make sense? Derek's expression softened. Perfect sense. Take all the time you need. Even if there's a war coming, even if we're running out of time. Especially then, some choices are too important to rush. Elara nodded and started up the stairs. Halfway up, she turned back. Thank you for everything. You don't have to thank me. I know, but I want to. That night, Elara dreamed for the first time in years. She stood in a moonlit clearing, silver light pouring down like water. Her mother stood across from her, young and vibrant and alive. You're awake now, her mother said, smiling. Finally awake. I don't understand what's happening, Elara whispered. You will. The moon has always watched over you, sweetheart, even when you couldn't see it, even when you thought you were alone. What am I supposed to do? Choose, her mother's voice was gentle. Not what prophecy demands, not what others expect. Choose what your heart knows is right. Choose love over fear, light over darkness. Choose yourself. I'm scared. I know, but you're also stronger than you know, stronger than they tried to make you forget. Her mother began to fade, moonlight consuming her form. Wait, Elara called out. I need more time, I need answers. You have everything you need already. Trust yourself. Trust your wolf. Trust the one who caught you when you fell. The dream shattered. Elara woke in darkness, her heart pounding. But this time, the darkness didn't feel threatening. It felt like possibility waiting to be shaped. She stood and moved to the window. The moon hung full and bright above the palace, its light painting everything silver. And deep inside her chest, something ancient stirred and stretched and whispered a single word. Soon. They reached the old Bonner lands at dusk 3 days later. The journey had been tense and carefully orchestrated. Derek had brought 20 of his best guards, including Clyde and 2 other experienced warriors, Harlan Voss and Rufus Finch. They'd traveled in formation, always alert, always ready for attack. But nothing had come. The forest was eerily quiet, as if even the wildlife knew to stay away. Now, standing at the edge of what had once been her childhood home, Elara felt grief wash over her like a wave. The house was gone, burned to foundations years ago. The gardens her mother had tended were overrun with weeds. The training grounds where her father had taught her to track were barely visible beneath fallen leaves and new growth. 12 years. 12 years since this place had been alive with love and laughter and safety. "Are you all right?" Derek asked quietly beside her. Elara nodded, not trusting her voice. They moved through the ruins methodically. The guards spread out in defensive positions, while Derek, Clyde, and Elara searched for anything that might explain what was happening. Elara found herself drawn to the eastern edge of the property, where her father's workshop had stood. He'd been a craftsman as well as a warrior, skilled at working with metal and stone. She remembered watching him forge beautiful things from raw materials, his hands patient and sure. The workshop was mostly collapsed, but one wall still stood. And carved into that wall, hidden beneath layers of moss and dirt, was a symbol. Elara brushed away the growth, revealing a circle with phases of the moon arranged around it. In the center was a wolf, head raised to howl. "Derek," she called softly, "look at this." He was beside her immediately. His eyes widened at the symbol. "That's the moon-blessed crest, the original one from centuries ago." "My father carved it," Elara whispered. "I remember now. He did it right before they died. He said it was important that I needed to remember where I came from." Clyde appeared behind them. "Your Majesty, we found something. A chamber beneath the old house foundation. It's been sealed with some kind of ward, but it's weakening." They followed him to the burned foundation. Sure enough, partially hidden beneath charred wood and stone, was a trapdoor covered in glowing runes that were slowly fading. "Someone's been trying to break through," Harlan said, kneeling beside the door. "These scratches are fresh, within the last week." Derek's expression went hard. "Whatever attacked our patrols was here, looking for a way in." "Should we open it?" Rufus asked. "We didn't come all this way to turn back now," Derek said. He looked at Elara. "But this is your family's secret, your choice." Elara stared at the trapdoor. Behind it might be answers, or danger, or both. But she was tired of running from truth. "Open it," she said. Derek and Clyde worked together to lift the heavy door. The runes flared once, then died completely. Below was a stone staircase descending into darkness. "Stay close," Derek ordered. "Defensive formation, Elara in the center." They descended carefully, lighting torches as they went. The chamber below was small but intact, protected by the wards that had kept it sealed. Stone walls were covered in writing. Tables held books and artifacts, all preserved perfectly despite the years. In the center of the room was a pedestal, and on that pedestal was a silver box. Elara approached it slowly, her heart pounding. The box was beautiful, covered in intricate carvings of moons and wolves. When she touched it, warmth flooded through her fingers. "It recognizes you," Derek said quietly. "Moon-blessed magic keyed to your bloodline." Elara opened the box. Inside was a crystal pendant on a silver chain. It glowed with soft lunar light, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. And beneath it was a letter, sealed with her father's mark. With shaking hands, Elara opened the letter. "My dearest Elara, if you're reading this, then we have failed to protect you as we should have. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for what you must have endured. You are the last of the moon-blessed, daughter. The prophecy speaks of you, not as a weapon or a tool, but as a choice-maker. The darkness that threatens our world can only be stopped by one who carries the light within them. But the prophecy does not tell you which path to take. It only says you must choose. This pendant belonged to your mother's mother, and her mother before that. It carries the accumulated strength of our bloodline. When you're ready, when you've found the courage to embrace what you are, it will awaken your power fully. But power alone will not save you. You must also find love, true partnership, someone who sees your worth beyond what you can do for them. The prophecy says you will know them because they will catch you when you fall, and they will never force you to stand. Choose wisely, daughter. Choose with your heart, not your fear. Choose the light, even when darkness seems easier. We love you. We will always love you. And we are so proud of the person you will become. Your father. Elara's vision blurred with tears. She felt Derek's hand on her shoulder, steady and grounding. They knew, she whispered. They knew what was coming, and they tried to prepare me. They loved you, Derek said quietly. That's what I hear in these words. Elara lifted the pendant from the box. The moment it settled against her chest, power flooded through her like moonlight made solid. She gasped, feeling her wolf surge forward with sudden strength. Her senses sharpened. The air around her began to shimmer with silver light. Elara, Derek's voice was cautious. What's happening? I can feel it, she breathed. The power, it was always there, just suppressed, waiting. The light grew brighter, filling the chamber. Clyde and the guards stepped back, awed and uncertain. And then everything went wrong. Above them, an explosion shattered the air. Screams echoed through the ruins. The sounds of battle erupted on the surface. They're here, Harlan shouted, already running for the stairs. The creatures found us. Derek grabbed Elara's arm. We need to go, now. They raced up the stairs and into chaos. The clearing was swarming with creatures unlike anything Elara had ever seen. Wolf-like but wrong, with too many teeth and eyes that glowed red in the dying light. They moved with unnatural speed, coordinated and deadly. The guards were fighting desperately, but they were outnumbered. Fall back to the tree line, Derek commanded, his voice cutting through the noise. Defensive positions. He shifted into his wolf form mid-stride, larger and more powerful than any normal wolf. His fur was black as midnight, his eyes blazing with alpha authority. Elara ran with the others, her new power thrumming through her veins but still untrained, still wild. She had no idea how to use it. One of the creatures broke through the line, heading straight for her. Derek intercepted it with a roar that shook the earth. He tore into the creature with savage efficiency, protecting Elara with absolute focus. But there were too many. Elara saw it happen in horrible slow motion. One of the creatures circled behind Derek while he was fighting two others. It lunged, teeth aimed for his throat. No, Elara screamed. Power exploded from her without thought or control. Silver light erupted in a wave, slamming into the creatures and throwing them back. The one attacking Derek was blasted away, crashing into the trees with bone-breaking force. But more kept coming. Derek shifted back to human form long enough to shout, Elara, run! Get to safety. I'm not leaving you. That's an order. A creature slammed into Derek from the side. He went down hard, his head cracking against stone. Blood bloomed across his temple. And something inside Elara broke. Not broke, awakened. She felt the mate bond fully for the first time, the connection between her soul and Derek's snapping into sharp focus. She felt his pain, his determination to protect her even as he was dying, his absolute refusal to let her be hurt. The choice crystallized in that moment. She could run, save herself, let Derek die protecting her and maybe survive to fight another day. Or she could stay, she could fight, she could choose him the way he'd chosen her. Elara stopped running. She turned back toward the battle, toward Derek's bleeding form surrounded by creatures, and she made her choice. No more running, she whispered. No more hiding. The pendant at her throat blazed like a captured star. And Elara called on the power that was her birthright. Moonlight answered. It poured from the sky like liquid silver, responding to her will and her desperate love. It wrapped around her like armor, like wings, like the strength of every moon-blessed woman who'd come before her. Elara raised her hands, and the moonlight obeyed. It struck the creatures like a physical force, burning through them with purifying fire. They screamed and scattered, unable to withstand the concentrated lunar magic. Elara walked forward, power radiating from every step. She was terrifying and beautiful, wrath and protection made manifest. The creatures fled. Within minutes, the clearing was empty except for the guards and the two of them. Elara collapsed beside Derek, the power fading as quickly as it had come. She pressed her hands to his bleeding head, and moonlight flowed from her palms into him, healing, mending. Derek's eyes opened. He stared up at her in wonder. "You came back." "Of course I came back," Elara whispered. "You caught me when I fell. Did you think I'd let you fall alone?" "The bond is complete," Elara finished. "I chose you, not because of destiny or prophecy or magic. I chose you because you're worth choosing, because you see me, because you make me braver than I ever thought I could be." Derek sat up slowly, healed but exhausted. "Are you sure? Once this bond is fully accepted, there's no going back." "I know," Elara took his hand. "I'm sure." The bond settled between them like a living thing, warm and right. Elara could feel Derek's emotions now, his relief and joy and fierce protectiveness. Could feel his wolf recognizing hers as mate and equal. "I love you," Derek said quietly. "I think I have since the moment I caught you." "I love you too," Elara whispered, "though it took me longer to figure it out." He laughed and pulled her into his arms. Around them, the guards were cheering, relief and happiness mixing with exhaustion. Clyde approached, grinning despite the blood on his armor. "We should probably get back to the palace before more of those things show up." "Agreed," Derek said. He looked at Elara. "Can you walk?" "I can do more than walk," Elara said, feeling the power still humming beneath her skin. "But let's save the dramatic demonstrations for when we're somewhere safe." They made their way back through the forest. Derek kept Elara close, protective but not controlling, equal partners facing danger together. As they walked, Elara thought about her father's letter, about choosing with her heart instead of fear, about the prophecy that said she would decide the kingdom's fate. She'd made her first choice tonight. She'd chosen love over fear, chosen to fight instead of run, chosen Derek as her mate and partner. The other choices would come. The darkness was still out there, still threatening. The creatures would return. But now she had power. She had love. She had a partner who would stand beside her instead of in front of her. She had become who she was always meant to be. And she was ready for whatever came next. The palace was in controlled chaos when they returned. News of the attack had spread quickly. The council was demanding explanations. Allied packs were sending representatives. Scouts reported more creature sightings all along the eastern border, as if the failed attack had emboldened them rather than driven them away. But Derek's first priority was making sure Elara was safe and cared for. He brought her to the tower, where Miranda was waiting with food and warm water for washing. The older woman took one look at Elara, covered in dirt and blood and glowing with residual power, and simply opened her arms. Elara collapsed into the embrace, letting herself be held for the first time since her mother died. "You've had quite the evening," Miranda said softly, stroking her hair. "But you're home now, you're safe." Home, the word settled something in Elara's chest. This place, this tower, Derek's careful protection and growing love, had become home without her realizing it. After she was clean and fed, Derek returned. He'd changed out of his blood-stained clothes and met with the council briefly, but his focus was clearly on her. "How are you feeling?" he asked, sitting beside her on the couch. "Overwhelmed, powerful, scared, certain," Elara laughed softly. "All of it at once." "That's fair. You unlocked ancient magic and completed a mate bond in the same night. That's a lot for anyone." "How are you feeling? You nearly died." Derek touched the side of his head where the wound had been. Elara's healing had left no trace. "Thanks to you, I'm fine. Better than fine, actually. The bond makes everything sharper, clearer." "I can feel you," Elara said quietly. "Your emotions, your presence, it's strange but not unpleasant." "It works both ways. I can feel your exhaustion and your determination." Derek smiled. "You're already planning the next steps, aren't you?" "Someone has to. Those creatures aren't going to stop, and whatever's commanding them won't give up just because I scared them off once." "True, but we don't have to face it tonight. Tonight you rest. Tomorrow we plan." Elara wanted to argue, but the exhaustion was catching up to her. Using that much power for the first time had drained her completely. "Stay with me," she asked quietly. "I don't want to be alone." Derek's expression softened. "Always." They spent the night talking, about the bond and what it meant, about the power Elara had discovered and how to train it, about the future they were building together against impossible odds. And for the first time in her life, Elara felt truly seen, truly valued, truly loved. 3 days later, the council convened for an emergency session. Elara stood beside Derek at the head of the chamber, no longer hiding, no longer invisible. She wore a simple but elegant dress in midnight blue, her moon-blessed pendant visible at her throat. The counselors stared at her with varying degrees of shock, fear, and curiosity. "Many of you have questions about recent events," Derek said, his voice carrying absolute authority. "So I will answer them plainly. Elara Bonner is my mate. She is the last of the moon-blessed bloodline, and she is now under the full protection of the crown." Counselor Voss stood, his face red. "Your Majesty, with all respect, this is highly irregular. The girl has no title, no political value, and you've risked." "Enough," Derek's voice dropped to a growl. "Elara risked her life to save mine and defeated creatures that would have overrun our kingdom. She has more value than any political alliance you could arrange. Challenge her worth again, and you'll answer to me personally." Silence fell. Another counselor, a woman named Leona Cross, stood. Her expression was thoughtful rather than hostile. "Your Majesty, I think what Counselor Voss means to ask is what this means for the kingdom going forward. The Moon-Blessed have been extinct for generations. The prophecy surrounding them is ancient and concerning. We need to understand what we're facing." Derek nodded. "A fair question, Elara." Elara stepped forward, her heart racing but her voice steady. "I am moon-blessed. My power is real. But I am not a weapon to be aimed at your enemies, nor am I a tool to be used for political gain. I am a person who will use my abilities to protect this kingdom because I choose to, not because anyone commands me." "And the prophecy," Leona pressed, "it speaks of a choice that could save or destroy us all." "The prophecy says I will make a choice," Elara said firmly. "It doesn't dictate what that choice will be. I will not be controlled by ancient words or fearful predictions. I will make decisions based on what I believe is right." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Counselor Emmett Finch, an older man with kind eyes, stood. "What do you need from us, Your Majesty? How can the council support you in this fight?" "Resources," Derek said immediately. "Soldiers, supplies, intelligence. Whatever's commanding these creatures is organized and patient. They waited 12 years to make their move. They won't stop now." "We also need to research the old archives," Elara added. "There must be information about the Moon-Blessed and how they fought darkness before. I need to learn to control my power fully and quickly." Leona nodded. "I'll assign scholars to the task. We'll find everything we can." The meeting continued for another hour, but the tone had shifted. The council wasn't entirely comfortable with the situation, but they recognized the reality. Elara was powerful. Derek was committed to her, and the kingdom needed both of them if they were going to survive what was coming. Afterward, as they walked back to the tower, Derek took Elara's hand. "You were magnificent," he said. "I was terrified. You didn't show it. I learned from the best." Elara smiled up at him. "You command a room without even trying." "Years of practice. You'll get there too." They spent the next week in intense preparation. Elara trained with Derek and experienced warriors, learning to channel her power with precision instead of desperation. She studied the archives with Leona and the scholars, piecing together the history of her bloodline. She learned that the Moon-Blessed had been protectors, healers, and warriors, that they'd fought against corruption and darkness for centuries before going into hiding, that her power was tied to her emotions, strengthened by love and weakened by fear. She also learned about the enemy they were facing. The creatures were called shadow-touched, corrupted wolves twisted by dark magic. And they served an ancient evil that had been sealed away generations ago by moon-blessed and alpha wolves working together. Someone was trying to break that seal, to release the darkness again. And they believed Elara was the key. The attack came on the new moon, when Elara's power was at its weakest. They'd prepared for it, expected it, but the scale was still shocking. Hundreds of shadow touched, descended on the palace from all sides, coordinated and relentless. Derek led the defense personally, his guards fighting with desperate courage. Allied packs arrived to reinforce them, but the enemy kept coming. Elara stood on the tower balcony, drawing on every bit of power she could muster despite the new moon. She sent waves of purifying light into the battle, burning through shadow touched wherever her magic reached. But she was weakening. Using power without the moon's strength to sustain her was like bleeding out slowly. "Elara, you need to rest," Derek shouted through their bond. "You're burning yourself out." "If I stop, they'll overwhelm us." A massive shadow touched, larger than any they'd seen before, broke through the front line. It headed straight for the tower, straight for Elara. Derek intercepted it, his wolf form barely large enough to match the creature's size. They clashed with bone-breaking force, rolling across the courtyard in a tangle of teeth and claws. Elara watched in horror as the creature gained the upper hand. It was too strong, too fast, empowered by whatever dark magic had created it. She had to help him, had to do something. But her power was nearly gone. Elara looked up at the moonless sky and made a desperate choice. If the moon wouldn't give her strength, she'd draw on something else. She reached for the bond, for the love and trust and partnership she'd built with Derek, for the connection between them that transcended magic or destiny. Power answered, different from lunar magic, but just as strong. It flowed from Derek through their bond, his strength becoming hers and hers becoming his. Together they struck. Elara sent a spear of combined power straight through the massive shadow touched. Derek tore into it with renewed strength, empowered by their connection. The creature dissolved into smoke and shadow, its corrupted form unable to withstand the purified bond between true mates. The other shadow touched faltered. Whatever connection they had to their master wavered without the anchor of the largest creature. "Now," Derek commanded, "drive them back." The allied forces surged forward. Elara sent one final wave of purifying power, using the last of her strength. The shadow touched fled. Victory! Elara collapsed, completely drained. Derek caught her before she hit the ground, pulling her into his arms. "I've got you," he whispered. "I've got you." "We did it," Elara breathed. "We did, together." Around them, cheers erupted. The palace was battered but standing. They'd lost soldiers, but they'd won. Later, after the wounded were tended and the defenses reinforced, Elara stood at her tower window watching the sunrise. Derek joined her, wrapping his arms around her waist from behind. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "Choices," Elara said softly. "The prophecy said I would make a choice that saved or destroyed the kingdom. Everyone assumed it would be some grand, dramatic moment, but I think it was simpler than that." "What do you mean?" "I chose to trust you. I chose to accept the mate bond. I chose to fight instead of hiding." Elara leaned back against him. "Those choices saved me, and in saving me, they saved everyone else." So the prophecy was about love. It's always been about love. Power without love is just destruction, but love gives power purpose. Derek kissed her temple gently. "I'm glad you chose me." "I'll keep choosing you, every day for the rest of our lives." "Good, because I'm never letting you go." Elara turned in his arms, looking up at the man who'd caught her when she fell and refused to set her down. The man who'd seen her worth when she was invisible to everyone else. The man who'd become her partner, her mate, her home. "What comes next?" she asked. "We rebuild, we train, we prepare for whatever darkness still threatens." Derek smiled. "But we do it together." "Together," Elara agreed. She kissed him as the sun rose over the kingdom, golden light mixing with the silver of her moon-blessed magic. She'd been a servant girl who collapsed at a ball, invisible and forgotten. Now she was a warrior, a mate, a protector. She was Elara Bonner, last of the moon blessed, and she had chosen the light. And she would never be invisible again.